theyeshiva.net.
So we're up to Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, close to the bottom of the page, 3 lines from the bottom. Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Brief summation of this sugya. The Gemarah has been analyzing the consistency of the views of Rabbi Yehuda and the consistency of the views of the Chachamim regarding one question and one question only. And that is, when I'm doing a permissible act, and while I'm doing the permissible act, inadvertently, I may come to do a forbidden act, which I am likely to do because it may instinctively follow the permissible act. For example, in our Mishnah, B'dikas Chametz, Erev Pesach in the afternoon, and when I'm holding the Chametz, I may inadvertently put it in my mouth to eat it because I'm hungry, which would be forbidden. B'dikas Chametz is permissible, eating is forbidden. So the question is, if the Chachamim felt the need to make a decree and prohibit the permissible act, why? Because it may directly lead you by mistake into the forbidden act. And those are the views of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim who argue about this in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says they do make this gzeira, and therefore there's no b'dikas chametz after the 6th hour Erev Pesach, when chametz would be forbidden to eat min haTorah. Where the Chachamim argue there is b'dikas chametz in the afternoon, and it continues throughout Pesach. And that's what our Mishnah taught us, the way the Gemarah understood the Mishnah. And the Sugya is trying to examine the views of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim in all of Shas, in all of Mishnayos, to be able to see the consistencies or the inconsistencies. And since many inconsistencies showed up, so therefore the Gemarah felt compelled to be able to make a seder and show that there is a logical rhythm in the view of Rabbi Yehuda, and there is a logical pattern in the view of the Chachamim. Right? I'm giving this introduction to you because it's important with any sugya not just to focus on the details, question and answer, a proof, a rejection, another proof, another question, but always to be able to see the big picture, to be able to understand, like, what we're not just trying to quote every Mishnah we know about Rabbi Yehuda and bring it into the Cholent and just make a confusing Cholent as confusing as possible. But there is always a rhythm, there is a rhyme here, because the function of the Gemarah is to make a seder in the views, to be able to see whose view was what was the mahalach, what was the logic, to be able to understand it, to be able to deduce one perspective from another perspective, to be able to create patterns and what we like calling today algorithms. So, what was the conclusion of this conversation? That the Chachamim, just like Rabbi Yehuda, are concerned with this issue. They are not lax. They don't say, don't worry about it. Everybody is worried that if a person is doing something that may bring him by mistake to something forbidden, it's something that you have to avoid. That they all agree with. Yet, the Chachamim are more stringent than Rabbi Yehuda in the sense that they don't distinguish between something that you're usually detached from and something that you're not usually detached from. In other words, as long as the object or the activity that you're doing is similar enough to an object or an activity that's permissible, and again, the object or the activity you're doing is similar enough to the object or activity that is forbidden, and you can exchange one with the other, meaning from one you can come to do the other, the Chachamim made this gzeira. That's why, practically, they did not allow you to harvest the new crop before the carbon omer. Why? Because when I'm harvesting it, what is going to happen? I may come to eat it, not because I want to, by mistake, because it looks like the other grain. It looks like the grain in my house that's from last year. There's no difference. It's not like this looks, there's a sign here, you're not allowed to eat it, and therefore I'm going to come to eat it. So they said, don't harvest it. That's number one. They also did not allow me to put oil in an eggshell and have it drip into the lamp on Friday night. And the reason is because as I'm eating and there's oil on my plate, it looks just like that oil. And inadvertently, I may come to take that oil for my own use when I'm not allowed to, because it's hastening the mechaber, the extinguishing the flame, or because it's muktzah. They also did not allow me to tie my barrel, which I want to lower down into the well to fill up with water, with a rope of weavers, a weaver's rope. Why? Even though it's not going to be an enduring knot, because it's easily exchangeable with an ordinary rope. And therefore I may, by mistake, say, oh, I could use a weaver's rope. Oh, there's another rope. I'll put that rope. And that would be, of course, forbidden. They did not mind if I connect two ends through a bow. Why? Because a bow is not the same activity like a classic knot. And therefore, even though the object is the same object, I'm dealing with a rope, with the same rope, but the type of activity that is permissible is very different than the type of activity that is forbidden. It's not like the oil where I'm eating oil and I may eat the oil because I'm involved with the oil and I may just eat it. Here you're saying the person may come to do something else, different, something different because you made a bow. They're not concerned about that. And therefore, everything is consistent in their situation, in their views, besides chametz. Chametz, they say, I'm not worried a person is going to eat it for a specific reason. Since the whole objective of what you're doing is mechazer alav l'sofer, you're trying to burn it, we're not afraid that when you're doing b'tikas chametz, that itself is going to bring you to eat it. Because your whole objective is to get rid of the chametz. So we're not suspicious that even by mistake you're going to come to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, he makes a gzeira not to deal with an object or an activity that is permissible but may bring you to make a mistake and do a prohibition only if it's something that you're used to doing a whole year. But if you're detached throughout the year, then we're not afraid. That's why he's afraid with b'dikas chametz. Why? Because people eat chametz all year. Since people eat chametz all year, instinctively they may come to eat it again. But he doesn't mind if you harvest the new crop before the carbon omer. Why? Because people are detached from it the whole year, and therefore that is what is going to prevent them from eating it. In the case of Shabbos, he doesn't mind if I fill up the eggshell with oil, because here again, people are very aware of the stringencies of Shabbos, and they're very cautious about what they do on Shabbos and what they don't do on Shabbos. That's why he doesn't care if I use a weaver's rope to make my knot on Shabbos, because again, because of the day of Shabbos, I am extremely cautious. However, he doesn't allow me to make a bow, not because I'm going to mistake it with a knot, but because by him the bow itself is considered a knot. In this whole conversation, there's now one more last piece. 3 lines from the bottom, Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. V'chol heicha debadol minei legazer Rabbi Yehuda. Abaya gave us that premise that chametz and chadash are different. Chametz loy b'dili minei, chadash b'dili minei. Chadash people are detached from. They're separated from it all year, much of the year. Chametz they're not separated from. They eat chametz all year. By chametz he makes a decree. By chadash he doesn't make a decree. Is that true? Is it true that every situation where people are detached, Rabbi Yehuda does not make a gzeira on a permissible activity which may bring you to a forbidden activity? V'hatanya, we learned a brisa. The brisa tells us fascinating case. You have a male cattle, firstborn male cattle, he becomes congested with blood. Now let's understand the case, the background behind this halach. When a Jew's animals give birth to a b'chor, and we're talking about sheep or cows, right? When a cow gives birth to a baby first male born, a calf, or the sheep gives birth to a b'chor, a first male born, so there is a unique halacha. And that halacha is that this baby, this male firstborn, is a b'chor, and therefore it's holy. The owner must give it away to the kohen. The kohen offers it in the Beis HaMikdash as a carbon, which belongs to the kohen. A part, like every carbon, a part of it gets burnt on the altar, and then the kohen takes it home, and he can eat it. We say it every morning, Habchor, right before Hoidu. Habchor, v'hamaser, v'hapesach, kotshim kalin, right? Shchitosim b'chol makom b'azara, habchor, nechol, lakoyanim. The b'chor is eaten by the koyanim, ma'aser l'chalodam, v'necholin b'cholir, b'chol machol, shteim v'lay le'echad, and the koyan belongs to him, and he could feed it to whoever he wants. As long as a person is kosher and eat a carbon, you have to be pure. Granted. But this is the property of the b'chor. It becomes a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash, then the kohen enjoys it with his wife, with his children, with his family, etc. This is only if the b'chor is unblemished. What happens if the b'chor is blemished? A mum enters into the b'chor. You can't bring it as a carbon because it has a blemish. What's the halacha now? The kohen treats it like a regular animal that he owns. It still belongs to him. He shechts it, and he eats it like we eat our animals. It's called chulin. It's not a carbon. It's not holy. He can eat it wherever he wants, in whatever state he wants. It's a regular meat. Am I allowed to make a blemish in my b'chor? You're not allowed to. Umum lo yiyah, Chazal teach us that it's biblically forbidden to cause directly a blemish in your b'chor, even directly or indirectly, and not only a b'chor. Any behema of kachim, any carbon, you're not allowed to intentionally make a mum. If a mum happened, you can't be at makrif, but you're not allowed to intentionally make it a mum. Here's the problem.
It doesn't have to be koda for
No.
It just wouldn't. He just takes it as.
If the b'chor has a mum, the kohen gets it and he treats it like a regular animal. This becomes very relevant today, because the halachas of b'chor still apply today. Belongs to a kohen. So if it has a mum, it's fine. If it doesn't have a mum, you got a serious issue.
But in the ordinary course, if you had
you have to let it run around till it gets a mum. Because if it doesn't have a mum, it's kodesh. It goes to the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash.
So why is there no redemption? Because how would I know that by another parts?
It belongs to the kohen. Because it becomes kadosh me'elav. The moment it's born, there's a chalois kedusha. Taza. You're right.
So if you have Parshas,
the other kachim you sanctify. Once you consecrate it, you're not allowed to make a mum here. Here, God sanctifies it. The moment the b'chor is born, it's kadosh me'elav. There's a chalois kedusha. There's still a mitzvah that the person should say harei ze b'chor, but it's holy whether you acknowledge it or not.
So he has no shakas to it.
Right? Exactly. You keep it usually for 30 days just to nurture it a little bit, and then you give it away to the kohen, and the kohen brought it to the Beis Hamikdash as a carbon. It was his. This was the din of b'chor. It only applies to oxen, cows, and to sheep.
But children of the child.
The first male born of these animals, not female, male born. By a child, but yeah, this the b'chor, your paida, yeah. You don't give it to a kohen to shecht. No.
So by a child, by a male child, a human being, there's no fatigue.
Right. But by us, but when we have a b'chor, we also give it to the kohen, but we have a way of getting it back by giving him money. But by the animal, not.
The question is asked, do you want the money or do you...
Yes. The reason is because for a child, it's important to remain with parents. The animal could deal with you or the kohen.
So how does that, it's really a question of conscience. The whole concept of the koda, something that gets...
Yeah.
That doesn't apply here.
No.
But what's the din to the other ones? What if the din? If I have a carbon that I have to bring, whether or not I have a halic in it, before it's checked it gets a mum.
Yeah.
Then I have
Yeah. If you have a carbon and the carbon has a mum now you have to pay the money to the hektish and you redeem the carbon. Because it has a mum. But I'm not allowed to make a mum initially. Yes. So here's the problem. I have a b'chor. It becomes congested with blood. And what happens is I know that this animal may die as a result. So what do I want to do? I want to let the blood, what's called hakazas dam. You want to let the blood, you want to reduce the pressure. So you poke the animal, you want to puncture a vein in order to allow the blood to come out. This is called bloodletting in English, hakazas dam, in order to save the animal. The challenge here is this could cause a blemish. It may not cause a blemish. The types of blemishes that are forbidden to cause are permanent blemishes, not temporary blemishes. a temporary blemish that will be healed, that's fine, because it's not disqualifying it from being a carbon. But a permanent blemish, that's forbidden. So what's the question here? This animal, this b'chor, became congested with blood. Afilu hu meis, even though it may die, we're not sure, but it may die. Ein makizin loidam. You're still not allowed to puncture a vein to allow bloodletting because you want to reduce the pressure. So even though you would think it's not a permanent blemish, I'm puncturing a vein. It's going to heal. It's going to heal. I'm doing it for the sake of the animal. I'm not allowed to divri Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Chachamim Oimrim, no. Yakiz. Of course you could do the bloodletting. You could puncture. Just be careful not to puncture anything that will create a permanent blemish. Let's see Rashi. Okay. So Rashi B'chor. Asur lahatel by mum. Afilu ligram, even indirectly. Kedetanya mum lo yiyaboy. It says in the pasuk, a mum should not be in him. Ein li ela shalayatel by mum. Enayin shal yigram loy talmud loy merkol mum. B'meseches beitz. Ein mekizin dam. Afilu b'makam she'eino yoyse by mum. Dahainu b'chol makam she'boyim eino choytech mimenu etzam. If you're not going to cut a part of a bone or a bone, oy poigim sfasai, or blemish its lip, oy oznoi, or its ear, v'chol dover she'eino choyze lekadmusai, and anything that will not be repaired, have a mum. That's the mum that is prohibited. Idach, but another blemish which is temporary, like puncturing the vein, lo have a mum. And yet Rabbi Yehuda said, you're never allowed to do the bloodletting when it comes to a b'chor. Why? Because he's afraid that once you allow the person to do a permissible act, right, inadvertently, he may come to create a blemish in the animal in order to let the blood. And this would be prohibited biblically. And even though karbonos is something that people are detached from all year, meaning there's always a sensitivity 365 days a year that if there's a carbon, it has to be treated differently. So there's a concept of budla. It's not like this animal is free for all to do whatever they want all year. It's kachim, and you know it's kachim. Nonetheless, Rabbi Yehuda is still afraid, and he makes this gzeira. So even though you could let the blood through puncturing a part of the body which will not leave a permanent blemish, Rabbi Yehuda is afraid that this may cause you to cut the animal in a place that will cause a permanent blemish, even though everybody is badel min hakachim. Rashi says machloikus Reb Shimon Rabbi Yehuda, but Torah's koyanim, you have this machloikus. If you're allowed to, you're not allowed to. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to. The Chachamim, which include Reb Shimon, say you are allowed to. So here we have a whole new contradiction. You're telling me that Rabbi Yehuda is consistent. Wherever is badal minei, he's consistent and he allows it. That's why Chadash works. Shabbos works. Chametz doesn't work, but Chadash and Shabbos works. Here we see, no, Rabbi Yehuda has a different mahalach. Clearly he made this gezeira. He's afraid if you allow the permissible, the person easily could come to do the forbidden because he's holding a knife, whatever he's holding, and this letting of the blood could cause something that's biblically prohibited, even though we're telling him to do it in a permissible way. Zog the Gemarah, good question. Hassam, over there's something else going on. And this is a concept in halacha called Adam Boel Alma Moinai. People get overwhelmed when they see loss happening in front of their eyes. It's called Adam Boel Alma Moinai. We have this concept when it comes to a sick person. We have this concept when there's a fire in a shtetl. Hassam here, Adam Boel Alma Moinai. Since a person is terrified, Boel means you're terrified. You're overly cautious. You're overwhelmed because of loss of money. He's watching a b'chor. He's a kohen. It's his animal. It's a precious animal. It's congested with blood. What's going to happen if I don't do anything? It's going to die. What happens if it dies? If it dies, it's worthless. It's like a carbon that dies. If you have a consecrated animal that dies, you're not allowed to eat it. It's an avela. On the other hand, it's a carbon. The halach is you have to bury it. So therefore, there is a state of panic. Boel is like a state of somewhat of hysteria.
Is it Bahala?
Yeah, Bahala, like you're terrified, you're overwhelmed. So what's going to happen? If you're going to allow him to do the letting of the blood, in a place that's not going to cause a mum, because he's in a state of panic and dread and hysteria and confusion, he doesn't have the presence of mind, the mental serenity to be able to be conscientious. Here Rabbi Yehuda is scared. When I'm preparing Chodesh, when I'm preparing the new crop, there's no hysteria, there's no dread. When I'm trying to tie the rope in order to get my barrel down, nothing is happening. There's no major laws. I just need to get that rope to work because I want some water. I need some water. But here there's a certain uniqueness. The person is in a crisis mode. And how do I know how long this animal is going to live for? Is it going to live for 10 minutes? Is it going to live for an hour? Is it going to live for a day? So Rabbi Yehuda says, therefore, I just tell the person, you know what? Don't do anything. If he knows the halacha says don't do anything, he won't do anything. If he won't do anything, the animal, there won't be a mum. There won't be a mum. If the animal dies, the animal dies. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Interesting. V'Rabbanon. What do the rabbis say about this? They're the ones who say you do make a gzeira, but here not. They use their very logic in the opposite way. What do they say? They say, Kol shekeh. Certainly, you're creating a bigger problem, Rabbi Yehuda. You're trying to save a monster, you're creating the monster. Kol shekeh. The Eloi Sharis like Klau. If you don't give him any outlet, Asalam Eved. He'll just do everything. If you tell him everything is forbidden, yeah, he says, listen, this is not for me. I'm going to save my animal. It's too much for me. So what is he going to do? He's going to go make a mum, because once you prohibit everything, so now there's already no difference if you don't make a mum or you don't make it. You do a mum. He's not such a Talmud Chacham to know this is a Rabbanon and this is the Iraisa. So once it happens, you'll do anything to get the blood. You want to cut the lip, cut the lip.
For the same reason, because
for the same reason. He's overwhelmed. You're going to say, off limits. I can't deal with that. I'm losing my animal. So I'm going to do. And since you prohibited everything, so you pushed me to the wall. You pushed me to the wall to do an Issur. Once I'm doing an Issur, who cares? I'm doing an Issur. Very interesting vart. In other words, if you prohibit everything, you're sometimes making it worse. You're trying to help because you don't want the person to make a mistake. If you prohibit everything, you're forcing rebellion. There's a halacha by war, right? That you're not allowed to surround a city from all four sides, because you create desperation and the need to fight back. If you create one side open, this was how Jews fought their wars. They had to leave one side open. You have to be able to let people, what's called, come down from the tree. You have to let them, you have to give them a way out. If I corner you from all sides, it seems like a victory, but really it's worse sometimes. Because now you're forced to fight back, I corner you, you have to rebel, there's no choice. If I could give you a way to escape, there's a way, you gotta, it's called bloodletting. You gotta let the blood go out. You gotta let them escape. So it's very interesting. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. So I was thinking, what's the svara? I'm not sure, but it could be. The Gemarah says in Maseches Baba Kama that whenever it says in Shas, Maisa b'chosid echad, a story about a chosid, it's referring to Rabbi Yehuda. It's referring to Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, when it says chosid in Shas, it could be Rabbi Yehuda ben Eloi or Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba. So when it says chosid, what's chosid? Chosid means a very pious person. So it could be Rabbi Yehuda felt, if the Chachamim are going to say, you're not allowed to touch this animal, a Jew will say, okay. The Torah doesn't want me to touch the animal. The Torah doesn't want me to touch the animal. The Chachamim maybe were looking from a different perspective, and like out of desperation, people are going to say, I'm sorry, but I got to do what I got to do. And then the svara becomes the opposite. If you don't give him any outlet, he'll just do everything. He'll do everything. I sometimes see it in the culture. There's some cultures where people don't know the difference between a daraisa, a derabanan, a minhag, a chumrah, a hidur, right? A meshagas, an idiosyncrasy, a certain family minhag, which may be nice. And when they break that minhag, they think, okay, now I can eat pork. I should eat on Yom Kippur, Mechal Shabbos, because once I broke that minhag, right, of wearing a certain type of shirt, so I'm not Jewish anymore. And if a person would would understand, there's priorities. Don't make everything on the same level. When you make everything prohibited, then if I rebel, then everything becomes permissible because there's no differentiation anymore. So therefore the Chachamim say, Let him let blood. Is there a chashash he's going to make a mistake? Yes, there is. So why don't we make a gzeira like we made by Chodosh? I'll tell you why. Because by Chodosh, all I'm telling him is to harvest in a few days. Not a big deal. But here what you're telling him is, your animal may die. People are going to rebel. Once they rebel, they'll do everything. Better to let him make a temporary blemish, even though he may make a mistake, than putting him in a situation where he's like forced almost to make this the permanent blemish, and it's more likely that the mistake will happen.
I don't pay everyone to do all the other exams. It's also very far-fetched sometimes.
You're right. If it's an inyan of bol al mamoinai, if it's a place of panic and hysteria, where I'm almost forced to rebel because it's too much to bear, they will not make this gzeira. That's their point.
Meantime,
Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda will make it. Rabbi Yehuda will make it. So I was just thinking it could be because Rabbi Yehuda, because of his... I'm not sure, but Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemarah says he was a chassid, so maybe Rabbi Yehuda just felt this way. It was like a little bit of a higher madrega, a little bit of a higher level. Because, I mean, Rabbi Yehuda could understand this logic. It's very simple logic. And we also understand Rabbi Yehuda's logic. Rabbi Yehuda's logic is, because people are in a state of panic, they won't be mechaven, they may cut the lip. You know, you just want to do anything. When you want to save a life, the most important thing, right, a doctor, an emergency is the Yishuv Hadas, right? Don't do crazy things because there's a crisis. But here, I have a crisis. My animal is dying. It's a big, nice animal. Well, not that big, but it's a bchor. And in a state of panic, I'm just like, just get this blood out. You got to cut the lip, cut the lip. I don't know where the vein is. I can't puncture a vein, but I can cut the lip. Just get the blood out. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's taina. Rabbi Yehuda's taina is that it's a state of hysteria. You can't trust differentiations, and therefore aser everything. If you prohibit everything, you're good to go. So fine, we settled the issue. There's still a consistency, and Rabbi Yehuda maintains his view, and the Chachamim maintain their view. This is a unique situation because of Adam Bol al Mamoinai. Rashi al Mamoinai Kayin Zeh Bol al Abchor Shelo Yamos Kol Shekain Hayil Bol Hu Iloi Sharis Lebemakim Sheina Yiseb Beimum Over al Dvarecha VaOisa. He's going to transgress. V'shuv ein nizeh b'makamum l'shaloi b'makamum. The savar shahakol shava. Very beautiful words. The moment you prohibit everything, in his mind, everything is identical. It's on the same playing field, and therefore, he's going to do everything. The Gemarah will not let go. And this teaches us about the integrity, the intellectual integrity. It seems like it's settled. The Gemarah is going to show it's not settled. Really? You just introduced a concept that Rabbi Yehuda says when people are overwhelmed because of loss of money, the rules of the game change. Now we're going to make a gzeira that we usually would not make because kachim b'dilim, but we'll still make a gzeira. Is this the case? I'll show you Rabbi Yehuda has a different view. Vatnan, we have a Mishnah, Maseches Beitzach of Gimel. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein mekardin behema b'yamtiv. You're not allowed to comb. Mekardin is you take a metal comb and you comb out a behema on Yom Tif to get rid of the mud or the filth or the dirt or the gravel that has attached to its body. You know, sometimes it goes into a ditch or it goes into mud or
They stand, lay on the floor.
They roll, they lay, they sleep, they lay down. So you take this comb, right, and you want to comb it out. So you want to do it on Yom Tif. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to. Why? Because it's very likely that you're going to create a wound in the animal. And when somebody wounds an animal and blood comes out, it's prohibited on Yom Tov. It's an av malacha on Yom Tov. So even though there is cement or concrete or mud or whatever that clept to it, became attached to its hide, and it's a cause of aggravation. But nonetheless, because by taking this iron comb and combing it, you may create a puncture and a wound, and blood is going to come out, which is forbidden on Yom Tiv. So therefore, the Buddha says you're not allowed to do it. Aval mekartzifin, but you could use a wooden comb. Mekardin is a metal comb, and mekartzifin is a wooden comb because it will not make that wound. So even though you're doing exactly the same thing, but since you're using a different instrument for each, so the metal is forbidden and the wooden is permissible. Chachamim say, no, we disagree. Ein mekardin, af ein mekartzifin. Do not use any comb, not the metal and not the wood. V'tanya, so the Bryce explains the Mishnah. Ezo kirud ve'ezo kirtzuf. What do we mean by the word mekardin and the word mekartzifin? So he says, kirud is ktanim v'oisen chabura. Kirud is an iron comb, so therefore the teeth are very thin and are more sharp and small, which can easily cause a puncture. Kirtzuf is gdoilim. It's done with a wooden comb, and therefore the edges are much more thicker. And therefore, ve'enois chabura, it's not going to cause a wound. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, one you can't use, and the other you could use. What's the question now? So Rashi says, Mekadrin, Ashterlid, Mekartzefen, Keteparshinan, Bekli Sheshin of Gasais. The teeth, meaning that, what are they called? The spikes, The teeth of the comb, it's much more thick. Ve'enois chabura, the chayvel v'alachaim av malachi. Ktani mias, what do we see from here? Aval mekartzefen. Rabbi Yehuda says you could use a wooden comb. Alma loy gazar mitoich sha'adam bohul isharis le kirtzuf avit kidur lefi sha'atit makrish asabehemo mitzara. What do we see from here? When the mud, is on the animal, it's making it weak. It's causing it aggravation. That's damage for your animal. You're having a loss of money. This is your animal. Adam bohul alma mainai. Rabbi Yehuda should say, if you allow the wooden comb, you're going to use the metal comb. And because you're a little panicky, because you're afraid for your animal, so therefore, you're not so relaxed, you're not so serene. So it's easier to make a mistake, just like he said before when it comes to bloodletting. But here we see not that way. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, person has the state of mind, this is forbidden, and this is permissible, and therefore you could allow him to use a wooden comb, even though you don't allow him to use an iron comb.
Makes sense. They're not panicking about combing their tail. They're uncomfortable with the combs. They're not worried.
Now I know your answer is good. Let's see the Gemarah. Hasem over there, the Ishavik le Mayis. Over there means the earlier case, the Bchor. If you leave it alone without treating it, without bloodletting, it may die. You're dealing with a potential fatality. Even if it's not 100%, but it's a potential fatality. Amrinan, there we say, Adam bal al mamoina. We say a person is overwhelmed because of his money, and if you're going to allow him to puncture the vein of an animal where it doesn't make a permanent blemish, he may puncture a part of the animal where it does make a permanent blemish. Hachi here, if you're going to tell him to leave the animal and not treat it, tzara ba'almahu. It's aggravation, but it's not a potential fatality. We don't say Adam bal al mamoinai. We don't say that a person becomes overwhelmed because of his money, and therefore we can rely on him that he's going to act responsibly with serenity and presence of mind, and be able to remember that you use a wooden comb, you don't use a metal comb, and he's not going to get lost in the rush and in the impulsiveness of the moment. He's going to become impetuous. Pachas kamayim. He's going to become impetuous and just, there's a comb, give me any comb, just give me a comb, we got to do it. Where it comes to bloodletting, give me a knife, slice everything, we just got to get the blood. Here Rabbi Yehuda makes a distinction. Zok Rashi. Okay, not Rashi. Zok the Gemarah Rabbi Yehuda. One last question. Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, what's the conclusion? Rabbi Yehuda is being consistent. He's not being inconsistent. Adam bol al mamoinai. Great. And that's why I'm afraid by the B'chor. Over here, I'm not afraid. So this is, I don't make a gzeira. I don't make a gzeira. I let him comb with a wooden comb. There's no need to say that he's going to use a metal comb. Says Gemarah, 1 second. A comb is not something that's forbidden all year. A comb is, l'cha'ira, permissible. So Rabbi Yehuda, maish nagabe chametz de gazar, u'maish nagabe kirtz of the loy gazar. Why by chametz Rabbi Yehuda is afraid? You let him do b'dikas chametz, he may come to eat the chametz. Why by combs doesn't he make the same gzeira? Forget about Adam bol al mamoina. We established that Rabbi Yehuda believes that when people are not detached from something, right, they may use it. A comb is not something you're detached from. It's not like a metal comb is something prohibited, like chadash. It's not something prohibited. You could use a metal comb, you use it all week. If you use it all week, and now it's Yom Tif, and you want to use it, you may come to make a mistake. So why by chametz you make a gzeira, and by kirtzuf, which is basically combing it with wood, you don't make the gzeira. Now you might answer that he already said that when it comes to Shabbos, right, chumra de Shabbos, bedili minei. You remember that, right? But this is not Shabbos. This is Yom Tov. This is Yom Tov. Shabbos, you could say, people are very conscious of Shabbos. That's why Rabbi Yehuda said you could put the oil in the egg and you could use the weaver's rope. But this is not Shabbos. This is Yom Tov. Yom Tov is not an Isser Skila. Yom Tov is Bechlal, not an Isser Karas. Malacha of Yom Tov is a lav. So therefore, Yom Tov doesn't have that chumrah of Shabbos. Also, Yom Tov, we're allowed to cook. Yom Tov is a lighter situation. But Mela, you can't say that it's matzat chumrah de Shabbos b'dilim because it's not Shabbos. It's an inyan of Yom Tov. So Mela, the Gemarah has this question.
In Yom Tov, you can do everything with tzarech achila.
Exactly. You're allowed to shecht an animal and you're allowed to cook the animal. So therefore, l'chayr, it's just like chametz, and nonetheless he doesn't make the gzeira. And for the Gemarah,
Not just, I mean, one place, the comb, you could actually find the use for it on Yom Tov. That makes it not muksa, so using it for whatever, something that you eat. But chametz itself is not a chumrah on the bedika, but not the chametz.
I'm saying on Shabbos, a comb you may also use. If you find a good purpose, you can use it. But the question is, we said chumrah de Shabbos. People are very, very careful not to do an Isser, right? So I'm saying it's not Shabbos, it's Yom Tov. That's it. It just says Yom Tov. I'm just bavaroning that. That's why the Gemarah doesn't have that. The Gemarah should say, because you already said that Shabbos is different. I'm explaining why the Gemarah can't answer that. So the Gemarah says, lechem belechem michlef, kirud bekirtzef loy michlef. Bread that's forbidden on Pesach is exchangeable with bread that is permitted on Pesach. As I told you, matzah and chametz were identical. But Mela, if you allow a person to be boidek chametz in the time of Isur, you may by mistake eat chametz. Why is he going to eat chametz? Because it looks just like matzah, and it's inadvertent. And even though he's doing bdikas chametz, right? But he may forget and exchange it. It's not like he looks at it and it's like this big inflated piece of yeast that will remind him. There's nothing to remind him. It looks just like matzah. So it looks just like matzah. Again, by mistake. It's not willingly, by mistake. He doesn't think. If he would think, he knows he's doing bdikas chametz. But since he doesn't think, so he may eat it. Mashenkin here, it's kirud bekirtzuf. You don't exchange easily, by mistake, a wooden comb with a metal comb. So even though I allow you to use a wooden comb, I'm not afraid that as a result, you're going to go to your closet and get a metal comb. Again, we said the person is in a mental space of serenity because there's no crisis. The behemoth has sighed, the behemoth is not about to die. So the Yehuda says, just like we learned before by the Rabbanon, that a bow and a knot, you're not going to exchange. Why? Because it's two separate activities. There, it's the same object. Here, it's not even the same object. Here, it's two separate objects. With the Rabbanon argue, as Rashi says, loy michlef, the Rabbanon savri michlef. And the Rabbanon say it is michlef, because it's an inyan of a comb, and therefore it is exchangeable. The Yehuda says not, and therefore he still remains consistent that he doesn't always have to make a gzeira. He makes a gzeira only when there's a chashash that it's exchangeable. And that's clear, just like the Chachamim. The question is, here they argue if it's exchangeable or it's not exchangeable.
Not worried about pulling out hair on Yom Tov?
Yeah, not the reason of not to, like at Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Not because of Chabura, because of the reason of it.
But an animal, you yourself, you're not using a metal comb, like using
No,
but it's metal comb.
Yeah, but the whole reason you know how to call yourself is make a
It's chabura. You make a chabura, a wound, so blood comes out. It's an av malacha.
We're not on Shabbos alone because you make the animals, the hair.
No, if it's your hair, then there's an issue of pulling out hair. That's a separate
Why
inyan.
By an animal,
Animal, you pull out the hair on
No, that's the problem. That's the problem. Pulling out
Yeah.
hair. That's why
when you,
one of the
when
reasons
you
with
comb
the
the hair on that.
It's not just Chabura.
On a,
It's davar she'enem eskaven. You're just trying to get the mud out. You're trying to ease the aggravation. Since it's a davar she'enem eskaven, yeah.
So when we call, it's also done. You just want to be nice. You want to be nice, so you.
Yeah, but that's your kavan.
If it's inevitable, then if it's psikresha, you have to be careful.
They also both
You wanna
don't
pull out
allow
hair.
It's still
smaller
one
teeth
here.
to comb,
Want to.
which is more likely to pull out hair.
The Chachamim say both. You're not allowed to both. Not the metal and not the
Both
wood.
say you can't use the.
Yeah, everybody says no metal.
Pull out hair more greater with that one.
And it's likely to make you could make a wound with the metal. Not for sure, but you may make a wound.
We're not. Why can't we comb then?
So yeah.
Yeah.
You're not part of the life.
If you're using a comb and it's not certain that hair is going to come out, right? Okay, and it's not certain that hair is going to come out.
Spread apart, and then
The Shabbos brush type of stuff.
That's why they make these Shabbos brushes. So then there's So then there's taka people who don't do it, but there's room to permit it. There's room to permit it.
So the hair doesn't
You
even
don't
seem like
really
it's
want it.
conceptual.
Yeah.
What about petting on the animal?
Petting of the animal has to do with touching something that's muktzah is not a problem. Moving something that's muktzah is a problem. So moving an animal may be muktzah. Touching muktzah is not a problem. You're allowed to touch a car on Shabbos. You're allowed to touch an elephant on Shabbos. If it moves, moving muktzah is a problem. Balechayim are muktzah. The question of pets in a house is a contemporary discussion where some allow it, some don't. I want you, the last thing, to take a look. Do you have Gilyon Hashas on the right side on the top? Gilyon Hashas? In small words, Gilyon Hashas on the right? Let me take a look at your Gemarah a second. There's no Gilyon Hashas? On the left. Left bottom. Left bottom. And my Gemarah is just different. Gilyon Hashas. These are the short comments of Rabbi Akiva Eger on Gemarah. Rabbi Akiva Eger has his short comments, and some of them, all of them are very powerful. I just want to read to you Rabbi Akiva Eger and Gilyon Hashas, because his question is one that teaches us how to think. Rabbi Nuchem, can I trouble you for that Masechta Yuma like yesterday, the red one over there on the bottom. That red one, yeah. Take a look, Gilyon Hashas. Umay shna gabe kirtzuf. Why by kirtzuf Rabbi Yehuda doesn't make a gzeira? Chametz he does make a gzeira. Okay? So you started to ask, but it's nicht der Gangen. The Gemara wants to know chametz versus kirtzuf. B'dikas chametz not. Combing with a wooden comb, yes. Even though both can easily bring to a prohibited act, which is a mistake. So the Gemara says it's different. Yeah. But that's the question. That Rabbi Yehuda is being inconsistent. That's the question. Kashali, says Rabbi Akiva Eger. You see Kuf Lamed. You see Gilyon Hashas. Kashali, I don't understand. Listen to his question. Gewaldige question. Hakidur hu rakdi rabbanon. Kidur, which means using a metal comb on Yom Tif, is prohibited, but it's rabbinically prohibited. Why? I'm not trying to make a wound and get out blood. V'lo have a psik reisha. And it's also not inevitable. You can't say it's 100% sure that when I comb my animal with a metal comb, it's going to be punctured and blood is going to come out. It could happen, but it's a davar she'enoi miskaven and it's not psik reisha. Okay? So even if the Chachamim prohibited it, it's not biblically prohibited. Kimavur lehedye bebeitza, the Amar, Rabbi Yehuda letamei, the davar she'enoi miskaven asur. The Gemara says there that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow you to use a metal comb because he holds davar she'enoi miskaven is asur. You remember we learned Rabbi Shimon holds davar she'enoi miskaven mutter. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not allowed to take a bench in your bungalow colony and schlep it from my house to your house through the earth, even though you're not interested in making a furrow in the earth. All you're trying to do is bring the bench to your house. And the reason is because he holds davar she'enoi miskaven asur. It's not the halacha, by the way. The halacha is davar she'enoi miskaven is mutter. I'm allowed to schlep that bench. But that's the shit of Rabbi Yehuda. We're talking about Rabbi Yehuda. So in other words, asur, by the way, means midirabbanan. Asur means rabbanan. Yeah. The habashab vim kein haverak is rabbanan. The habashab is daf mem aleph amid beis b'tois v'z dibra maschil. Micha kasvu the Rabbi Yehuda davar she'enoi miskaven b'shabbos have the rabbanan. When Rabbi Yehuda says it's asur, it means the rabbanan, and when Rabbi Shimon says it's mutter, which is the halacha, it means mutter even rabbinically. V'chein kasav toisus b'yom daf lamed aleph amid beis. V'chein kasav Rashi b'shabbos av kuf chafal of dalef itumoy. V'im kein oy bazay zakter b'kiva eger mishum hachi loy gazar kirtzuf atu kidur. I know why he didn't prohibit using a wooden animal because you may use a wooden comb because you may use a metal comb. You know why? The kidur gufihu derabbanan. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's going to use a metal comb, and that itself is only rabbinically prohibited. Aval bechametz gazurinon shema yoichal the havedoy reisa. Gewaltige kasha. You hear the kasha Akiva Eger. The whole question of the Gemarah seems so strange. Rabbi Yehuda says comb with a wooden comb, not with a metal comb, because with a metal comb you may make a wound, even though it's not your intention. But since it may happen, right? You're not allowed to do it because blood could come out, and that's prohibited, even though you didn't have an intention. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's asur. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's asur.
So why is it derabbanan? It's an isur because of malacha, so it should be deraisa.
So he says you could use a wooden comb, right? We asked, you may come to use a metal comb. Says Rabbi Akiva, okay. You may make a mistake and use a metal comb. So what's going to happen? You'll be over on the isur derabbanan. It's not like when you use a metal comb, you're trying to let the blood let. It may bring to it. And even if it does bring to it, it's not a biblical prohibition. It's like when I'm schlepping the bench, even if I make a furrow, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say it's a biblical prohibition. It's a rabbinic prohibition because I didn't have an intention to do that. And it wasn't inevitable. And whenever you don't have an intention to do that and it's not inevitable, even if it happens, you're still not biblically liable. It's just a rabbinic prohibition. So I understand why Rabbi Yehuda allows me to use a wooden comb, because he says, I know people could make mistakes. But even if they make a mistake, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is they'll do a rabbinic prohibition. And the whole purpose of a rabbinic prohibition is as a fence for a biblical prohibition. So it's like we say, Gzeira l'gzeira, lo yamnini. You don't make a fence to a fence. No, you're not going to let me use a wooden comb, because if I use a wooden comb, I may use a metal comb. And if I use a metal comb, what's the problem? I may come to do something that's biblical, but this itself is not biblical. So I understand they didn't do a double fence. When it comes to chametz, it's a whole different situation. I'm afraid that in the middle of dikas chametz, I find chametz, I'm hungry, I see a nice piece of laffa, what do? It goes into my mouth. That is a biblical prohibition, Erev Pesach after Chatzos. So I'm not letting you do b'dikas chametz because you may come immediately to make a mistake and do a biblical prohibition. How could you even compare it to this creature of Kiddur and Kirtzov? And Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, V'tzarich iyun gadol. V'tzarich iyun gadol means it's a huge question. And the Gemarah has to say, because bread you could confuse with bread. But two types of combs you don't confuse with each other. And let's say you could confuse the combs with each other, it's still different than chametz. This is bringing you to do a derabbanan at best. And this is bringing you to a daraisa. I can understand why here he made a gzeira, here he didn't make a gzeira. Here you make a gzeira, why? Because if you cross the fence, let's talk about it physically. Here if you cross the fence, right, you get electrified, chas v'shalom. Okay? Here if you cross the fence, what happens? You bump into another fence. That's it. Here if you cross the fence, you could get hurt. Here if you cross the fence, what happens? You just bump into another fence, which if you cross that, you can get hurt. So I do understand why I don't let people go through this fence, but I let people go through that fence. You understand? Because I need one fence. So I can understand this. Tzarich and Gadol. But Akiva Eiger says, Acharei zeh, Motzasi bezer Hashem yizbarach, shehikshu kein betoisvus yeshanim, Yuma daf lamed daled amid beis. I see that the Tosfos Yeshanim asks this question in Yuma daf lamed daled amid beis, and therefore Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, okay, the question was asked. So what does the Tosfos Yeshanim say? But your Toif is the question, yeah? Your Toif is the question, a very, very powerful question.
So the Gemarah answers that way.
Where does the Gemarah answer that? The Gemarah doesn't answer that.
Yeah, before you have these points on the Dramat.
No, the Gemarah never said that answer. The Gemarah said that Chumrah de Shabbos b'dili minei. The Gemarah said Chumrah de Shabbos b'dili minei. That's what you mean?
We had someplace else where it says it's only the Dramat.
It's not printed on Lamed Daled Amud Beis. It's printed on Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. He says Lamed Daled Amud Beis, but it's not printed there. So you got to figure that out. And Tosfos Yeshanim adds in the question, he says not only is it a doiraisa, in the middle of Pesach, it's a kares. I understand why Rabbi Yehuda is geyser. The Chachamim hold that dikas chametz should be even in the middle of Pesach. That's what Tosfos holds. So it's a kares. I understand Rabbi Yehuda. He doesn't want you to be over on kares. Here, if you're combing with a metal comb, at best, you're doing an Issa D'Rabbanan. I mean, at worst, you're doing an Issa D'Rabbanan. So the Rabbi Akiva Eiger doesn't say that the Tosfos Yeshanim answers it. He just says the Tosfos Yeshanim asks it. He doesn't say, look there for an answer. He says, Tzarich iyun gadol. The Tosfos, because Tosfos Yeshanim answers Yesh Loimar. You're right. It's a good answer, but Adif Minei Kamashani, which means the Gemara has a different answer, which is a better answer. Because what the Gemara is trying to say is that the two, even in Gashmias, it's not the same. In other words, besides the fact that in Isur it's not the same, yeah? In physically it's not the same. This is bread and bread, and this is two different types of combs. So he says it's a better answer. You're right, it's a good answer, but this is a better answer. That's what he says.
So the Gemarah is not using the word Deoraisa Derabonon because on a physical level there is.
So I would explain what the Tosfos Yeshanim means is that even though it's of starka svara, but this svara is still an idea in halacha, which means it's a spiritual idea. The Gemara is saying, before we get there, right? Don't just physically, physical reality, bread, lafa and lafa is lafa. Metal combs and wooden combs is metal and wooden.
Doesn't that beg the question though? Because there's a difference not only in time but in degree.
Right, so he's saying it's a good one. But I told you, but Kivega doesn't say Tosfos Yeshanim answers it. He doesn't. I see the Tosfos Yeshanim asks it.
That's the surah of the Chachamim.
Oh, and that's the Chiddush, that the Chachamim are geyser. That
you're not
So the rice,
that you put the allowed
Then in this case, yeah. Huh?
for the case of
No, not in chametz. Over here, they're geyser even wood, yeah, even wood, yeah.
Is that what the Kiddush of the Talmud is?
Right, yeah. Rashi says that Abanan Savri Michlef. They hold that it's Michlef, and obviously they hope that the metal is prohibited.
Because it could lead to something which is Malach Deoraisa.
no, not the rice.
No, it's
It's not a Kiddush.
what?
I have to look at the Masechta Beitza what their svar is. Could be they hold it Psik Reisha. Have to look in Beitza. Dover Sheina Miskaven is mutter, is usher only for sure. But Rabbi Yehuda holds not. Rabbi Yehuda holds even if you don't know for sure, it's still usher. But the Rabbana. Yeah, you're still not allowed to. Dover Sheina Miskaven. You know, it's something that could lead to a malacha. Even though it's not your intention, Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not allowed to.
Even though it's not for sure.
Even though it's not for sure. We don't hold that way. La halacha, we say it's mutter. You're saying l'chayre davar sheina miskaven, even metal. Yeah. So the Gemara addresses it there in Beitza Daf Chav Gimel. Maseches Beitza, your mind. What's the svara of them? The kasher b'kiveg is akasha. It's akasha. Was sagt ihr?
Das Spur von Chachamim and Friedman, if the was nicht gut ist, they're going to come for everything.
Oh no.
But you can use the same Spur for wieder verkehrt.
Atazai. Adam bol al mamoina. You ask him like the Chachamim, if you don't let him do it, he'll do everything. But here it's not such a bahala. If you're losing your animal to death, you'll do everything. You'll rebel. If they're telling me for tsar, don't do it, so then the Chachamim say, okay, I won't do it. It's a different Indian. The same thing we said by Rabbi Yehuda with Adam Bol, we're going to say by the Chachamim here also, yeah. So that's l'chayda, this is l'chayda klar. Beitza, the Mishnah is Beitza, Daf Chav Gimel, Amud Aleph.
How do we know that it's the rice to eat chametz Erev Pesach?
Excellent question. There's a whole sugya. Not yet, no. Not yet, it's a good question. That's a good question. How do we know you're not allowed to eat chametz Erev Pesach? It says touch bisu, you have to get rid of it. Good question. That's the basis of the sugya. It's a good question. We're going to learn later a whole sugya how you know you're not allowed to eat chametz Erev Pesach. You see, Rabbi Yehuda ein mekadnes, abehem abiyan misha oisech habura. Chachamim oimnim you don't do either. Rabbi Yehuda holds davar she'enim eskaven asur. Aha. So he says that the Rabbanon hold, these Rabbanon here hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that davar she'enim eskaven asur. But there's a shitta there, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who allows it because he holds like Rabbi Shimon, davar she'enim eskaven mutter. So you could use even a metal comb. In other words, if you're allowed to use a metal comb because davar she'enim eskaven, then of course you're allowed to use a wooden comb. But both the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda in this sugya hold that davar she'enim eskaven is asur. So a metal comb, everyone holds is not. You're not allowed to. The question is a wooden comb. So Rabbi Yehuda says they're not exchangeable, so you could use a wooden comb. But it's not Reb Shimon. If it was Reb Shimon, why do you say Reb Shimon?
Because you mentioned it before.
I mentioned Reb Shimon holds davar she'enim eskaven mutter. But the Chachamim here is not Reb Shimon. If it would be Reb Shimon, you're right. If it would be Reb Shimon, you're right.
Even
So witness
even if
because-
it's a double sign in the stad, it's only the Rabban.
But it's only the Rabbanon. It doesn't.
You're right. Lahalacha, since Dover Sheina Miskaven Mutter, you're allowed to comb the animal with a metal comb.
No, even lot of years.
Even if the one that says Osir, it's still the Rabbanon.
Rabbi Yehuda, yeah, you're right, the Rabbanon.
Basically, the house the cash. If I was when goes the kids the kid there.
If you want to know, even if it's exchangeable, why would you? You're saying they're machmir even more than Rabbi Yehuda. They're machmir even more. They're guys are gzeira, because even then it's only the Rabbanon. That's what you're saying, right? Tosfos writes, by the way, that our combs, everyone holds it's asur because it's psik reisha, because you're for sure going to tear out here. You hear? Tosfos says our combs, where you're for sure going to tear out here, everyone holds it's asur because it's psik reisha. So then it's even it's a dover sheina miskaven, you're not allowed to.
But now we have
Combs
soft
that
combs.
you ever?
He says our types of combs. I guess they had combs where you could take out the mud without the hair.
Very.
So how?
Or hearth or something. I don't know.
Probably the teeth were very distant from each other, so it can extract the clumps of mud. It can get out the clumps, but it wouldn't. Maybe it would stick into the clumps and get it out rather than go to the skin and like that. You understand what I'm saying?
Then it's a problem.
It's probably the mud is fresh. Yeah, maybe I don't know.
Otherwise, it was done on Friday. Or I mean,
But I thought Dover Sheina Miskaven
You
is
guys
in
that
this-
through, you know, it's hot outside, they have to 20 minutes again.
If it's inevitable, it's usher. So if it's for sure that hair is going to come out, you're not allowed to. You're right. If you're not sure, then you're good.
So that's the machlokes of psik reisha. If there is a psik reisha by this activity or not.
No, that's not a mach.
Rabbi Yehuda would be holding that it's not, and the Chachamim say it would be yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yes.
Not big enough
Yes.
I have to be ma'ayin in that nekuda.
Right.
Or the chachamim are geyser if it's a derabbanan. Okay.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.